like to call this special meeting of council to order. Actually, tonight we have 3 meetings. The first being a public hearing on the Planning Act, followed by Committee of the Whole, and then our regular council meeting. At this time, I'd like to call upon Joel Longfield to sing our national anthem. Would you all please rise and face the flag?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command. Car ton bras s'est porté le veille, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Yvonne Doucette. Seconded by Councillor Desmarais. Are there any questions or comments? There being none, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest tonight? We will now proceed with the public hearing under the Planning Act. This hearing will consider an application for zoning bylaw amendment. This is a public meeting report for a zoning bylaw amendment, file number D1412143986 on Jaeger Road. Mr. Aquilina, can you please proceed with the explanation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you, members of council, staff, and everyone in the public this evening. The purpose of this meeting is being held pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act is to consider a zoning change submitted by Brian Lambie on behalf of the owner, Teresa Witcher, and Samir Hamad. I will get into the details of the application, but first let me let you know that the notice was given in accordance with Section 34, subsection 12, 13 and 14 of the Planning Act, and Section 3 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. Explanation we follow this evening, Mr. Mayor, is I will present the application. We will then allow council an opportunity after we hear from the applicant, and I see Mr. Lambie is here this evening, to ask any questions. Then we will open up the floor to any member of the public that wishes to address council. I will give a notice then of the written notification for the zoning amendment and an explanation of future meetings to follow. This time, Mr. Mayor, I would like to present the planning report. But before I do that, let you know that all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property were mailed such notice. Proper posters were placed on the property, as well as a notice was placed on the City of Port Colborne's website.
Before I proceed, Mr. Aquilina, I'm not sure I requested whether any disclosure of interest. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yep. If you could follow the screen, the arrow was pointing to the subject property. Part of Part 19 and 20, Concession 4, municipally known as 3986 Jaeger Road. Back in October of last year, the Committee of Adjustment gave approval of a severance to sever off Part 1 to a bona fide farmer. Part 2 would be the retained portion. And yet at the next slide, you will see what's being proposed on the zoning amendment. This area in here, which is Part 1, will be zoned to an agricultural purposes only zone, which will preclude any future residential development. Part 2, this portion here, will be zoned to non-farm residential to permit a future single-family home. Portion here, as well as here, is zoned for environmental protection, to be zoned for environmental protection to recognize an existing wetland on the property, which you can see right there. When we circulated the application to the public, no member of the public wrote to council or to staff. The following agencies did comment. Canadian Niagara Power indicated they had no issue. Ministry of Transportation indicated that it was outside of their catchment area, so they had no comments on the application. City's engineering advised that a municipal consent permit would be required for a future culvert. The Niagara Regional Conservation Authority indicated they had no concerns with the application. The region of Niagara indicated that they did not support the severance that was proposed from the Committee of Adjustment because they didn't conform to their policies or provincial policies. So for this application, they don't have any other comments to make. As you can see from the area, it's obviously agricultural in nature. The official plan recognizes that as agricultural, which predominantly is for agricultural purposes, which also does, though, permit some single-family residential uses. The zoning of the property surrounding the area is all agricultural, as well as it recognizes some existing residential homes and zones that as non-farm residential. Mr. Mayor, that does conclude the application. I think I provided a clear picture as to what's being proposed. And that does conclude my report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Are there any questions from members of council or our planner? Yes, Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dan. Dan, the part that is going to be non-farm residential, just to confirm, was that agricultural before?
Through Mr. Mayor to Council Bonner, that is correct. The official plan says that no new lot can be created on a zoned piece of property that was not in existence prior to the zoning bylaw coming into effect. So the creation of that lot through the Committee of Adjustment requires it to be changed to non-farm residential to allow a future single-family home. But it was zoned agricultural, that's correct.
Okay. I'm just a little confused because I was always under the impression that agricultural pretty much was locked in and couldn't be changed to something else. So obviously I was wrong on that. You can tell me.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bodner. The official plan does require the area to be recognized as agricultural. However, it does allow, in certain situations, future agricultural uses. Minimal, but it does allow for that. Our zoning bylaw then says that no residential use can be permitted on a lot that was not in existence prior to 1982. So in the past, yes, we have allowed certain parcels of land to be zoned for non-farm residential use to allow a future single-family home. The official plan has some leeway and talks about that.
Any other questions, Council? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there would only be one dwelling allowed on this parcel?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Butters, that's correct. What you see here,
Yeah.
it will not be allowed to be developed for any future single-family use. One of the conditions from the Committee of Adjustment that the existing dwelling, which was a designated home, which council did remove from the register, needs to be demolished. That's one of the conditions of the Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment also required that zoning change to non-farm residential and to recognize the wetland feature on the property. You're welcome.
Any other questions of council? There being none, I'd like to hear from the applicant. Mr. Lambie, are you going to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nice to see you in your chair. This application is essentially satisfying a condition of consent. We were granted severance on this property about 2.5 months ago. The proposal is, with respect to the farmland parcel, it'll be zoned agricultural purposes only, so no dwelling can be constructed, and also the existing dwelling will be removed or demolished from the property. The non-farm residence zoning that Mr. Bodner was referring to is actually only the northerly 2 or 3 acres of the property on Part 2. So most of Part 2 is the pond or the bush. So the non-farm residence is going to be restricted to the northerly about 3 acres. Okay. Apart from that, if council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions or clarification from members of council? Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Mr. Lambie can fill me in on this and fill this in. Can you go to the other picture? The other drawing, no, the one after that. You see Part 2 where it has almost like a tongue at the end there on the north part of it? Is that where they've been digging and making that pond larger? Is that the idea behind Part 2?
Yes, the pond has been expanded.
Okay, okay. Do we know what it's going to be used for, or I'm just being curious?
For the recreational purposes of the owner. They want to build a home on the north part of it and use the pond for their own recreation purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Lambie? There being none, I'd ask, are there any members of the public who have any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we open it up to any member of the public, I do need to read the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions or at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the city to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party of the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to add that person or public body as a public person or, add the person or public body as a party. Thank you.
Does everyone understand what Mr. Aquilina just said? Okay. At this time, are there any comments or questions from members of the public? If there are, please stand and come up to the podium and identify yourself, name and address. There being none, this now concludes the public hearing under the Planning Act. May I have a, go ahead, Mr. Aquilina.
Sorry, one more legalese that I got to make notice of.
Okay. That's why you're
There's
a planner.
There's a sign-in sheet in the back. If any member of the public would like to receive a written notice, please do so. And you will in fact get that written notice, but I do need to read the following. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the city clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give a clerk a written request of the notice of the passage of the bylaw will be given such notice. The explanation of the future meetings in regards to this application, I will bring forward a recommendation report, more than likely at the next council meeting or the council meeting thereafter for council's consideration. This does now conclude the public meeting under the Planning Act. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. May I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting? Moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Bodner. All those in favor? Opposed? This now concludes our meeting under the Planning Act, and we'll move on to our next meeting. Our meeting is adjourned. This is the Committee of the Whole. Are we ready to proceed? I call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Deputy Clerk Sanez, Are there any addendum items?
No, Mr. Mayor, there are no addendum items this evening.
We will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Alderman Bodnar, Councillor Bodnar, seconded by Councillor Butters. Any questions or comments? There being none, call for the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There, look around there, see none? Are there any items requiring separate discussion? Yes, Alderman Doucette, Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Number 7?
Number 7. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 1, please.
Item 1, thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 2 and 10.
Item 2 and 10. Councillor Elliott.
Item 4, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any other items? We will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda? We already did that, I apologize. Okay. Are there any disclosures of interest? Items requiring separate discussion? Which we've done. There are no further items. Can I have a motion to approve the remainder of the items? Moved by Councillor Demeray, seconded by Councillor Doucette. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. We have 3 delegations listed this evening. The first is Terry Huffman from the Downtown Port Colborne Cruisers Association. Mr. Huffman, are you here? Oh, Mr. Spiteri?
Replacement for Mr. Hoffman, if that's okay.
Fine. Go ahead.
Right here. Yeah, there you go. Well, that's new. Thank you. Well, Happy New Year to everybody here in council. We just want to take a few minutes and bring everybody up to speed on what 2014 looked like and what we have planned for 2015. It wouldn't be par for the course for Mr. Gavriluk and I to be sitting here to not give you an expectation of what we have in terms of a request. So I'm going to start there. The 2 things outside of what we were able to do this past year that we're going to come to the table and ask for is potentially Market Square for all the weeks as opposed to 2 weeks, and the potential to deal with our ability to play music potentially in Block 1, 2, and 3 for 21 weeks from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock every Thursday night. So that's starting with the request. I'll come back there in a minute. If it's okay, I'll start moving through the presentation here and ask Mr. Gavriluk to kick in where he can. By the way, Mr. Huffman can't be here today. They welcomed their first grandchild last night around 9 o'clock. Katie and baby and everybody are fine. Terry is about as big as the baby, which is really cool. I don't know how we move this presentation forward. Oh, perfect.
Very quick.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we're very pleased in our first year of the Port Colborne Downtown Cruisers Association that we have quickly moved to becoming what we're termed the new premium weekly car show destination in Niagara. We use the term destination in Niagara. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is from Niagara. We've had folks from as far away as Rochester, Listowel, Ontario, London, Ontario, all attend our car show, Woodbridge, Vaughan, Maple. But it's becoming very quickly adopted as Niagara's premium destination and compared to some of the car shows that are happening in the region that are happening in shopping malls. Our big difference is obviously the wonderful and beautiful downtown Port Colborne. I need new help.
Yep.
There we go. Next page. So up above, hopefully, there's small pictures. I apologize for this, but May 22nd was our first night. Angie, I saw you there. I saw Yvonne and a few of you guys there. That is a picture of the downtown at approximately 5:30, May the 22nd. We had a total of 63 cars show up. Our initial target for those of you that were here was if we could get 50 cars downtown, we'd be happy for the majority of the year. Well, we hit 63 in week 1. 3 weeks later is the picture on the right-hand side. That was June 13th. And our car count that night was almost 200 cars. So it had gone from an expectation of about 50 to about 200 cars. We're not sophisticated enough yet to do traffic counts in terms of citizenry. Our best guesstimates at this point in time is probably 3,000 to 4,000 citizens are visiting the car show on any given night. So give you an idea, we didn't bother getting into the end of the year because the end of the year all you see is people and you don't see the cars, and we're all car people. So some factoids, and Gary can get us there. There we go. Some factoids. In 2014, we finished the year with over 490 registered participants. Of note there, not every single week did they come to the event, but 490 individuals registered cars throughout the year. What's amazing about that is the average is around 2.4 vehicles are being registered. So we have a database right now of just under 1,000 cars that are available to us from a promotional perspective right here at our fingertips in Port Colborne. We donated over $7,000 to the Port Colborne Community Fund, and Gary has a letter here from that fund to tell you what's transpired since that donation was made. These were generated through the 50/50 every week.
I think you better read it because I had eye surgery and
he's great with a computer.
yes.
I'll skip to the notes. It's a very good note. But what was requested of us via the Port Colborne Community Foundation was that they would like to allocate $2,500 to a new endowment fund that, with our approval, would be named the Port Colborne Downtown Cruiser Association Fund. I'm pleased to submit to you here in 2015 that we're in discussions with them to target an even larger number and continue on with that. So part and parcel of the downtown doing what it did with the car show, not only did we generate some excitement for businesses downtown, but we started down the road of becoming a significant contributor in terms of charitable dollars. I'll talk to what our target is here in 15 in a second. Our Port Colborne Downtown Cruiser Association is 100% privately funded and managed. And a lot of you on council have suggested to us that this is a model they'd like to see more of in the city. What I mean by that is that we didn't ask for $1 from anybody here in the taxpayer base or at City Hall, except for your support in terms of organizing the events. And we found private funding throughout the city to help us with that. The reason I say private funding within the city is all of the dollars came to us from businesses that are established and headquartered here in Port Colborne. Last year we ran 15 of 18 scheduled weeks. We actually ran all the weeks, to be honest with you. Of the 3 weeks that we didn't run, we had 2 tornado watches and 1 really bad weather week. And interestingly enough, the tornado watches, we averaged just over 60 cars, which boggles my mind. The average of that is about 130 cars. Towards the end of the season, and I think those of you that have made a point of coming out, towards the end of the season, we were running around 250 to 280 in terms of car count, hence the request we're going to make with respect to the Market Square, just from an overflow and safety perspective. Our Facebook site, throughout the 18 weeks of operation, averaged a reach of about 4,000 people. Considering we had one of our teenage volunteers kind of manning that and helping us with it, we're very pleased with that performance. Very good advertising for us. And as I said earlier, we've got a Port Colborne First mantra with our sponsors and participants. And what I mean by that is we were lucky enough not to have to go outside of the city for sponsorship, outside of the city of Port Colborne. And our organizing group is right here from Port Colborne. There's 4 of us that are involved in this and making it happen, and we want to keep it that way. Moving forward to 2015, and these are very big targets for us. Beyond this, we've got a schedule of events for the 21 weeks that we're going to go to, and we're still jostling with what that looks like and what it doesn't. But we are conservatively targeting a 50% increase in registrations from 490 to 700. Simple math, and what we're being told by the participants is everybody that has registered says they're at least telling one friend. Well, if they did that, that's 1,000, and we're saying we're expecting 50% of that number to actually register, which will take us to the 700. We're conservatively targeting a donation amount of about $10,000 to the Port Colborne Community Fund and a furtherance of that endowment fund. Our target is to remain 100% privately funded via the PC-based companies. As I said earlier, we're going to move from 18 to 21 dates. That move is literally, and I'm proud to say this, that move is literally from popular demand. We were almost lambasted at the end of September for shutting down when we did, because there was 3 weeks of great weather. Not to suggest we're going to control the weather, but there was 3 great weeks of weather right after we shut it down. The way that's going to work out is we're going to start 1 week earlier and go 2 weeks later, is I believe how we're going to run it. As well as increased media coverage. I'm not at liberty at this point to suggest exactly what that looks like, other than we had coverage both in the Tribune, Niagara this week, a lot of electronic newspapers, Heidi Grazina and Company, 91.7, and COGECO did about a 4.5 minute spiel on our cruise night. We're going to leverage that and potentially some national exposure as well. Which leads me to where I started this whole thing. Respectfully, on top of your generous support last year in terms of getting us set up and helping us out, the 2 things we would ask for above and beyond, we wouldn't ask for a change in the traffic flow or anything like that. The only thing that we would suggest is Market Square today is becoming, regardless of how we managed it, people began to park there anyway. And it's the safest place for us to go from an overflow perspective. So I guess what we're going to be putting on the table here shortly over the next few weeks is, can we get to a point where we can expand the zone to include the Market Square for the 21 planned dates? And the second thing that we would look for is we found out about halfway through the event about noise bylaws and needing, anytime we have amplified music, to need to get a bylaw, or I'm at a loss, an exemption. Thank you, by the way. To get an exemption, probably the most efficient and inclusive way to do that would be to get an exemption for all 21 weeks, all at one time. Beyond that, I think we've chewed up more than our 15 minutes of chat time here. I'm willing to open it up for questions and anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Spaderi. Alderman Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters. Have you been working with city staff on Market Square, or is this your first kick at bringing it forward?
This is the very first time. We've talked about it at the end of last year, Councillor Bodner, but we have not made a formal request.
Okay, then I would be willing to bring a motion forward asking staff to meet with representatives of your organization, and knowing that I would assume that there's time sensitivity to this, and if staff could come back with a report to council on how this could work, because I'm sure it can work, and at that time you can ask for your exemptions to staff and see how that can all come as one neat package to us. I think that would be a reasonable request. And also, just to throw it out there that, you know, as you're gaining all this money and putting it in this nice fund, there is a great automotive shop in a local high school that happens to be blue and white, you know, without, you know, mentioning the name, that, you know, could probably benefit from it. But I'll just throw that out there for conversation. But, okay, thanks.
I apologize for this cough. Thank you, Councillor Bodner. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Tony and Gary, you guys did something that we've been looking for a long time, and that is making sure that someone knows that Port Colborne is at this end, not only up on Highway 3. And because of that, it's been successful. I agree with Councillor Bodner in that we need to put all the motions together. I would like to see them back here in our hands, if that's possible, by the end of February, mid-March. Councillor Bodner, what do you think? Would that work for you guys? And by putting a time, sort of a time limit on it, then we know it's coming back so that you can be prepared to get started as well. So I'd like to see something of that nature. And I'd also want to make sure that we include this exemption to our noise bylaw for all 21 days, so that we know exactly which ones they are, and we can put it all together in one package, and let's pass it all together. So if you would like to accept that as a friendly amendment, I would, and I'm more than ready to second it, that we do that. We put it all in one package, and that we have it back to us by the end of February, mid-March.
Any other questions from any other aldermen? Councillor Bodner, I recognize you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, is the end of February feasible? Ron, do you know? I think for whoever might doing it.
New speaker system. Through Your Worship, through to you, to Councillor Bodner. End of February is fine. I think we can, I've already actually taken the liberty of assigning this to someone, so we've kick-started the process. But we would like the opportunity to sit down and meet with them to kind of really get a definitive timeline that would, benefit the organizing committee and a group, so that there's a good chemistry there as far as rolling it out with the entire bit of information. So we can work within those timelines right now, pending an outcome of our discussions with the Cruisers Association.
So I would submit then the motion will be the last council meeting of February to come back to us. Just because there could be hiccups, you might go into March and, there's plans to be made and everything. So earlier the better, I think, from that perspective.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Bodner, I would work with that timeline right now. Worst case scenario is probably the first meeting in March, perhaps, if that, depending on our outcome with our discussions. I'm not sure what their needs are yet. It's the first time we've seen some of this, and plus we've got to consult with engineering staff and roads and parks and whatever. So there are some details that we can take care of, but I think end of February is a good target, and pending the outcome of our discussion, worst case scenario is probably pushing it to the next meeting if necessary.
Any other questions? Councillor Bodner, have you formulated a motion?
Yeah, I think I'll just simply what I said, unless staff wants something else added in there. Straggling?
Seconded by Councillor Doucette.
Doucette, yeah.
Any questions or comments?
Staff may have one.
Just to advise council that dealing with noise exemptions, it's not an actual report. The bylaw right now allows the clerk and our bylaw enforcement officer, senior officer, to actually give that exemption. Doesn't need to come back to council, so that will expedite things even further.
Okay.
Everyone understand the motion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Spiteri, Mr. Gaveluk. We appreciate your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
I would now like to call Principal Ann Kennerly and a group of students from Port Colborne High School to come to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor Maloney and members of Port Colborne City Council. My name is Taylor Fraser.
And my name is Jack Fagan, and we're grade 11 students at Port Colborne High School. So for nearly 100 years now, Port High has been the community high school in Port Colborne, supporting students and the city. In that time, tens of thousands of students, just like myself, have learned, volunteered, and succeeded thanks to Port Colborne High School.
Because of our school's proud tradition and exciting future, we have declared this year the Year of the Bears. We are proud to present you and council with Port High sweatshirts so you can celebrate along with us. I would like to introduce our principal, Miss Ann Kennerly, who would like to tell you more about how Port High supports our community.
Mayor Maloney and Port Colborne councillors, as you know, our young people play a critical role in the community. They volunteer at service clubs and other organizations doing good work in Port Colborne. They support business through our co-op program and by working at local part-time jobs. They support the local economy and they spend their money here. They champion important causes. But most importantly, young people grow into leaders entrusted with shaping the future of our city and of our world. In fact, I know there are several Port High graduates sitting around the council table tonight. Mayor Maloney is a Port Colborne High School grad. Port Colborne High School prides itself on its tradition of excellence, its strong community base, and its innovative use of modern teaching technology to best serve the students of Port Colborne and Wainfleet. Academics always flourish at Port High. For example, Port High's EQAO scores are 22% above the provincial and board average in applied math. Also, Blue Bears have entered and won competitions in short video production, essay and poetry writing, artistic competitions, and we continue to excel in French language competitions, having won gold in the DSBN French language speaking competition for the last 6 years, including sweeping the junior and senior competitions for each of the last 2 years. I would now like to introduce Zach Piazza, who will share some athletic highlights from Port Colborne High School.
Port High offers a wide variety of sports for our students that bring together our school and the community. The wide variety of sports offered at Port High allows every student the opportunity to play and be a part of a team. I would like to take a moment to tell you about how successful the Blue Bears have been on and off the field. Our track and field team has been outstanding. There are 8 Blue Bears who won and qualified at Zone, Southern Ontario, Region, and finally represented Port Colborne High School in the All-Ontario Championships. 8 is the highest total of any local high school. Our senior and junior girls basketball teams continue their tradition of excellence each year. In the past few years, both junior and senior teams clinched the Southern Ontario Regional Salsa Championship title. You may have seen our senior girls on COGECO this fall during the Tribune Tournament, where Port Colborne High School won the Constellation Championships. This is an outstanding group of young girls who play like champions both on and off the court.
We would like to ask our school council chair, Ms. Mary Ann Fagan, to say hello to you as well.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to tell you what a proud Port High parent I am and also a proud Port High grad. Our parent council meetings are the 4th Tuesday of every month, so please, our doors are always open. If you'd like to attend our meetings, please join us. And for all you busy people, we can certainly add you to our email list. We'd love to keep you informed of all the great things that are happening at Port Colborne High School. So thank you very much for having us here this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Fagan. And we would also like to introduce Ms. Amy Converset, Program Leader for the Arts and for our SHSF programs at Port High. And with her, Rebecca Bolton, who is a grade 12 student who will be graduating this year.
Hello. I'm pleased to report our school continues to add new programs to support student success. This year, we've added our 5th high skills major program in hospitality and tourism. Port Colborne High School also has specialist high skills major programs in arts and culture, health and wellness, transportation technology, and in manufacturing. In this way, we can continue to impress with a record of graduating more students with an SHSM designation than any other school in the District School Board of Niagara. In our tech area, we shine in construction, transportation technology, culinary arts, and cosmetology. And ladies and gentlemen, Port Colborne High School does more than shine in manufacturing technology, it dazzles. In fact, there is clear evidence that our program has gained national recognition. 7 Southern Ontario Welding Championships in a row, All-Ontario Provincial Champions, 3 out of the last 4 years, Canadian National Gold Champions, 2 of the last 4 years. These accomplishments have brought us to a point where the evidence is clear that Port Colborne High School has the best technology program in Port Colborne, but also in Canada. And as Port Colborne's parents and citizens have so correctly pointed out, all levels of excellence, be it the arts, academics, athletics, or technology, have been achieved with a variety of different programs at Port High.
Another example of student success is that we hold our honor roll banquet every year at the Brebeuf Hall, and we had over 200 students attend with their families this year. Many parents and family members, and even the employees at the hall, say how impressed they are with our school and with the behavior and accomplishments of our students. Another example is our most recent event, which was our semi-formal we held in December at the Italian Hall. This is where we have been holding semi for years now. The workers at the hall make a point of telling us every year how well-behaved and polite Port High students are, and that our students are welcome anytime to book events at their hall. I have to tell you, for a high school to be invited back year after year says a lot about the positive culture, tone, and expectations Port High students achieve on a regular basis. Further evidence of how well our community school works with students to prepare them for the next step after high school is found every year at graduation. During our graduation ceremonies, Port High consistently sees over 30% of our graduates earning a specialist high skills major designation, 40% of our graduates earning gold and silver medals for academic excellence, and at each graduation, over $23,000 in community scholarships and bursaries are awarded to our students every year.
Tradition, community, innovation. A tradition of excellence, a strong community, and a commitment to innovation provide our students with the competitive edge they need as they step out to be citizens that Port Colborne can be proud of and that our country needs. This is all clear evidence that it is the teaching, the community support, the talent of individual students, all combined with strong character development and work ethic that has brought about this sustained, successful trend for Port Colborne High School over these many years. As our motto says, ad astra per ardua, to the stars with hard work. I hope that you are all inspired as I am by all of our Port Colborne students and their accomplishments. You are receiving a Port High hoodie from our students, and we would like to invite you to share in our success, and we would like you all to know that you have an open invitation to attend and celebrate with us as honorary Blue Bears, to come to Port High, to come to our track meets, our classrooms, our next skills competition. We hope to see you soon at Port Colborne High School. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Principal Kennerly. Indeed, I am a former graduate of Port High, as was my mother. You have a long, proud tradition, and you know, that school is vastly different than when I attended there, and for the positive aspect of it, you're to be congratulated. Your presentation tonight on the activities of your student is truly exemplary. And I had a few into my office before the meeting started tonight, and they indeed lived up to your commentary on the entire school. And I can't be remiss if I thank you for my hoodie. I will wear it proudly, and I thank you on behalf of all council for that. We have Alderman Doucette, Councillor Doucette would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Port High. I have to say thank you as well, because we put out a call to the high schools about the beginning of December for Noah's ice rink. We had 6 of your students, I believe, and one of your teachers, I believe it's the welding teacher. Mr. Rogers. That's right, okay, who showed up and were very, very helpful and did a lot of things that some of the younger students that were there helping us couldn't do. And I have to say thank you for Noah, and I know you're going to be receiving a letter from them and everything else, but I think that since we're doing this publicly, there should be a public thank you for that as well. They were very helpful, and a couple of instances, especially when we moved the stand over, we needed the muscle that they had. And it came in very, very handy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to move on to our next delegation, and it's Mr. White, Michael White, Program Manager for Crime Stoppers of Niagara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, staff, members of the audience on COGECO watching us at home. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm extremely proud to be the Program Manager for Crime Stoppers of Niagara, and I'm joined here tonight by one of our board directors, Tanya Bouchard, who sits in the audience with us tonight. I want to be able to go over a very quick overview of what Crime Stoppers of Niagara is and what it does for our community. A lot of people don't really know what Crime Stoppers is or what the program does in the community. Crime Stoppers is an anonymous forum for citizens in the region to crime. They can call, text, or tip, or text or email us information with absolutely no way for us to know who they are, where they're calling from, and all we want to know is the information. A lot of the times we will get information, and it's very important and very pertinent information, and it's always, in most cases, about criminal offenses within the region and outside our region. I like to think that Crime Stoppers was a Canadian invention. Back in 1976, Greg McAleese, a born Canadian, moved down to New Mexico, police officer down there, had a robbery that took place at a gas station. And he knew that there were witnesses and that there were people in the community that knew what had transpired and what had happened. So he came up with this idea and went to his chief and said, "Chief, I want to be able to put up a reward. I want to air a reenactment on our local television station because I think there's people out there that know." And sure enough, he aired the reenactment and dozens of phone calls came in. He got the information he was looking for. There was 2 other individuals that he had no idea who they were. That information was garnered through those tips, and he put up his own money as the very first tip through Crime Stoppers. A lot of people think Crime Stoppers of Niagara is the police. We are not the police. We are a not-for-profit charitable organization run by a very energetic, very thoughtful 12-director board. And I do, because I receive their emails and their phone calls, they are a very energetic and a very imaginative board and work very hard to keep the program moving forward and following its vision and mission. As I said, Crime Stoppers is a diverse reflection of our community. We have board of directors from all the different municipalities and areas across the region. And they bring to the table all their different experiences and knowledges so that we can move our program forward. So how do you get a hold of us? A lot of people know about the 1-800-222-TIPS. We've seen that on bumper stickers, we've seen that on reenactments on TV, but we also can receive tips via text message. You can send us a text message through your phone, and all of the information about your phone number, where that phone message came from, anything that's related to you as an identity is completely stripped as is received into our office. And we have no idea where that message originated. We can then, in fact, return a message and speak right back and forth to what we call our tipsters. We also can do that on our website through a webmail. So we can actually receive an email that gives us information about a crime or information about future crime for the exact same reasons. And all that information as well about the sender is completely stripped before it even gets to our office. We have no idea where that email originated. It could be anywhere in the world. So how does it really all work? So somebody calls us, somebody sends us a text, somebody sends us an email. It usually has information about some form of crime that is either has happened or may happen. We will then engage in a conversation, ask a lot of questions about and get detailed answers as much as we can. And then that individual is given a number, 5-digit, 6-digit number, and that's how they will in the future identify us. The information is then given to our local law enforcement, whether it is the Niagara Regional Police, the OPP, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, the Canadian Border Services, RCMP, you name it, we are associated and touched by all those agencies. We forward that information off to them, and usually within about 30 to 60 days, we get what we call a disposition back. That disposition tells us, how good was that tip? Was that the tip that solved that crime? And if it was, it's now eligible for reward. That information then goes up to our board of directors for them to examine and then make a judgment as to what that tip value would be. Tips can be anywhere from $1 to $2,000. Once that is approved, arrangements are made with the tipster. Now, if the tipster had called us, they're given instructions to keep calling us back so that they can get an update, because we can't call them, as to whether or not their tip gets a reward. If it is a text message or a webmail, we can actually reach back out through that same process and then award them and let them know that they've been rewarded a reward. So then they are given instructions as to where they got to go and pick up their reward. And at no time during this process do they need to identify themselves. For those who don't know, it is legislated that anybody that provides us information will never be called to court. There's absolutely no cause for it and no reason why any judge or lawyer will call one of our tipsters up. We don't know who they are. They won't know who they are. And a lot of people kind of question as to why do individuals contact us. Well, they'll contact us for all kinds of different reasons. They just want the crime to go away. It could be their brother, their sister, their neighbor. They may be worried that there might be reprisal, that if they were to call the police and a police car shows up and all of a sudden their neighbor is getting arrested, they're worried that maybe their neighbor might react and seek some kind of retribution against them. So we're interested in criminal offenses, drugs, weapons, murder, assaults, robberies. There's a whole host and a large list of criminal activity that we are interested in, and there's a phone call that we receive that gives us parts of information, gives us a lot of information, gives us what we call a small nugget that may lead us in a different direction or lead an investigator in a different direction that will help solve a crime. But I really think the meat of it is in the numbers, is what we call it. We've been recording this in our software since about the early 90s, but we've been around since 1985, and 1985 is important to us this year, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But because of the tips we've received, those tips have resulted in 1,900 arrests in the Niagara region. 3,404 cases have been cleared off the law enforcement docket. We've paid out almost $77,000 in rewards. We recovered almost $6 million in property. Almost $31 million worth of value of drugs have been seized off our streets. And a total recovery of almost $37 million. And that also includes the weapons that we've also been able to get off our streets. So I think the impact that Crime Stoppers of Niagara has had on this community is a very large one. But we can't do it alone, and we do it through partnerships. The media, our community, members of this audience, law enforcement. Our media partners, such as COGECO, who is actually a great partner of ours, helps us get our message out. Niagara This Week is another great partner of ours. CHCH, you've often probably seen our reenactments aired after the news on CHCH. We do it through fundraising. We do it through a bumper sticker campaign, which we call Driving the Message Home, and I'm proud to say that this very council was the very first one to adopt our Driving the Message Home campaign last year and putting bumper stickers on city vehicles. So I thank you for that once again, for taking that initiative and driving that home. We also have a great partnership with local business, Avondale Food Stores and the Niagara Ice Dogs. We do an annual fundraising gala every October. Tickets are available now. If you'd like to see me after, I can make those arrangements. But we're not going away. 2015 is our 30th year. We've been here in Niagara for 30 years, and we plan to keep on going. But I have one thing to ask the council and the audience at home tonight. Tell our story. When you hear about something that happens in your community, if it's criminal in nature, and you know the person and you can talk to them frankly, tell them about Crime Stoppers. Tell them that we're available. Tell them that they can call us. Tell them that they will be anonymous. Because things do happen through Crime Stoppers on Niagara, and we plan to keep it that way and keep it moving to promote a safer Niagara for all of us. I'd like to thank you for our time today to present to you. And remember, crime doesn't pay, but Crime Stoppers does. I'm open for any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. I very much appreciate your presentation. I'm very impressed with your statistics.
Thank you.
You're crime fighters from the first degree.
We don't have capes.
Yeah. But, I'd just like to comment that I was on the steering committee to establish Crime Stoppers back in the mid-'80s, and I say that you have flourished, and I say those statistics say it all. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? There being none, we have a proclamation that we will deal with later in the in the evening at another council meeting, and we will certainly endorse your organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman, or Regional Councillor David Varick, thank you for joining us. Do you have a report that you'd like to present? Pardon me, sir? A small one. Please take your position at the podium.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to give a brief update to council this evening on a couple of things that have been happening lately at the region. One of them I'm going to give a very high level because I understand that the Economic Development Officer of the region and the CAO, Harry Schlang, will be here 2 weeks from now. So I'll be here to join them and allow them to get into greater detail on their Team Niagara action plan and economic development strategy. But it is one that both past council and this council have been working towards. And it will be up for council adoption, but basically there's 3 pillars, and then I'll leave it at that and let the folks in a couple of weeks get into greater detail. But the pillars are investment attraction, leads generation, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Pillar 2 is economic research and analysis, and Pillar 3 is advocacy. There's a lot we've done already to that end, working not only with our private sector partners, but also with our local EDOs, our local economic development officers, including here in Port Colborne. So I appreciate the cooperation at this level as well. The CEO brought to our attention in one of our first meetings was economic prosperity plan. That's something that's been distributed to all of council, all of regional council. We're all giving our feedback, and you can bet we'll have some fulsome discussion about that moving forward. We did have a corporate services committee meeting and budget steering committee meeting. So the information I'm giving now is preliminary. It's still up for council approval and adoption, but as a high level, so far we're looking at a small reduction in waste management fees by 0.13%, a small reduction in water fees, 0.77%. That's the requisition the region gives to local municipalities, and a slight increase of 1.88% for wastewater so far. We talked about expanding and extending our industrial development charge grant program and extended to August 2017. And also we approved at the committee level anyway a microfit contract on 16 sites throughout the region to put solar panels on various buildings, including the roof at the Port Colborne ambulance station as well as District 6. So 2 in Port Colborne, there you'll see an 8% return on investment over 20 years. And then finally, if I can add, Mr. Mayor, the backfilling of Chair Caslin's seat is actually being discussed tonight in the city of St. Catharines, so I'm sure a lot of eyes and ears on that discussion. But certainly with the results of that, we'll go to regional council likely for approval on the St. Catharines recommendation, and I'll be happy to share the results of that with this council as well. I'm happy to take any questions as always, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. I'd also like to congratulate you on being elected chair to the Corporate Services Committee and the Budget Review Committee. That's quite an honor for you, and it's certainly, we're very appreciative down here in Port Colborne for the influence you will have in both of these committees, and we'll be looking for some support, I'm sure, in the days to come. Any questions of Councillor Barrick? There being none, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate those kind words as well.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to give a brief mayor's report as well. Our strategic planning sessions will start on Saturday, January 24th. This is a public meeting, and members of the public will be asked to participate and to give us their input on where the direction they feel this community should go, not only during the next 4 years, but for several years, perhaps a decade thereafter. I'd also encourage all members of council to continue to look at the briefing books on the budget. Our discussions on the budget will start very soon as well. I'd like to also point out that the New Year's Eve celebration, which was sponsored by the City of Port Colborne, was held on December 31st. It was an excellent event. There's a lot of smiling young children and their parents were there. The fireworks were spectacular as usual, and it was just a very nice prelude to New Year's Eve. Certainly, it was very family-oriented, and we did a good job, especially with I'd like to compliment our Youth Advisory Council, our members of our Special Events Committee, Mr. Hakeem, and the YMCA. They all did an excellent job in putting that program forward. The Mayor and Council's levy was hosted by us on the 4th of January, and it was a reasonably well-attended event, perhaps more than previous years, and gave an opportunity for members of the public to come and chat, just chat with us, or to present their concerns, and they did that. So it was a good event, and I think it was well attended. I'd asked the council to consider whether we wish to be involved as a council in the Save the Welland Hospital campaign that would appear to be getting off the ground in Welland. I personally feel it's a worthwhile endeavor, because I consider Welland my hospital, and for everyone in Port Colborne to keep that facility open as an active care hospital is something that I think we should be working towards and doing what we can, combining with our sister community in Welland to bring pressure to bear on the provincial government on this issue. Okay. We will now move on to our councillors' items and new business. Just looking at the item number 1. What's that? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a resident contact me. This goes back before Christmas, so a few months ago, and it had to do with trees being cut down on what he considered to be city trees along Boulevard of that particular street. So there was some investigation, and I know that one of the trees was determined to be diseased and would have had to have come down, which was unfortunate because it was a really old oak tree. But in the meantime, that wasn't the only tree that had come down. The lot was just, I'll use the word decimated, because I actually went out there again today, and what used to be it would have been kind of at least some buffer. All of it's been cut down except for very few side on the west end of this property. So the neighbor who put in the complaint had a couple of questions, and still has questions about where we're at with that situation, whether there will be some new trees planted on the boulevard to replace what this landowner cut down. And I think in not correctly cut down. I don't think they should have touched any of our trees. They could do whatever they want on their property, but they could have maybe left the boulevard trees alone. I have emailed, received more of it, information and pictures, which I sent along to Mr. Aquilina today to be helpful. So I just wondered if there was some kind of update they could give me, a kind of where we're at, that I can let this resident know that, you know, he's not done all this in vain, and that people really need to be not doing things like this. Like, I was kind of sad because when we drove around this area and these trees like just gone, and one little squirrel goes kind of zipping across this open section where there used to be trees, and my husband said, well, I can see why that neighbor wouldn't be happy with this. And I said, and I can see why that poor squirrel probably isn't too keen on it either. Just cut down all of his potential homes, right? So anyway, if Mr. Aquilina or whomever can give me an update or some kind of, that I can tell this resident what's going on here. Thanks.
Perhaps, Mr. Aquilina, there are other councillors who have a comment on item number 1? Okay. We're not there yet. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butters, and thank you very much for those pictures. They were very helpful. Had a meeting today with bylaw enforcement staff as well as the Director of Engineering and Operations. What we are going to do, it's an open file. So I have to say that it's an open file. It's not a closed file, but we are actively pursuing matters, and we believe we'll have a resolution that I believe all of the council and the individual that made the complaint will be happy with. Replacement of trees.
Okay, go ahead, Alderman.
Just to follow up with that, is there like a time frame that you're looking at that I could tell this resident a time frame?
Through Mr. Mayor, there's a little more information that we're gathering, but it's something that we've had discussions with the property owner. And I don't want to go into too much more detail, but it's something that we're aggressively pursuing, and we hope to have a resolution soon. Obviously, things won't, if there is a direction to do certain things, as in replanting, well, that's not going to be done till obviously springtime, but I'll leave my comments at that.
Yes, Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I threw you to Ron Hansen. Ron, I emailed you rather about a snow fence for the around the intersection of Rodney Street and Ferris Street, and you were going to check something out on that and get back to me. So could you maybe update on that?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Desmarais. Yes, we're reviewing that. I've turned that over to our roads foreman, who's in charge of placing snow fence and snow control in our operations in the city. He's reviewing that request now and see if there's some way we can accommodate that in that area. So I will get back to you as soon as I have a comment back from him. I'm sure it'll be this week.
Thank you, Alderman. Councillor Emery. Are there any other? Oh, sorry, Councillor Doucette, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hansen. I've started seeing some of the LED lights going up. On Kalali Street, there's about 7 of them. Right just past and just around where the church is. Okay? And I like them. I like them a lot. And if we can continue on doing that, we're looking good. But I like the fact that we've started getting them up and people are starting to see them. So, you know, I just wanted to give a little update, the fact that I've noticed them. That's great.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Ron. Now the snow's coming down, piling up a little bit downtown. A couple of questions been asked about snow removal on the windrows or whatever you want to call them, where the plows have plowed it off on the sidewalk. Exactly when do we start to remove those? I know that it's usually when we seem to get ahead of the plowing of the streets, and we've got some extra time to get down there and remove it, but is there a certain standard that it has to meet before we start to remove?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Elliott. It's based on projections on weather forthcoming and the height of the windrows, obviously, in the downtown. What we like to do is measure the width of the sidewalk that's available, consider that in front of the stores, make sure that the sidewalks are still passable and the windrows aren't actually encroaching on those. At the present time, the windrows aren't such that they're encroaching a great deal on the sidewalks. The weather predictions for the next week or two is above freezing, so we're looking to see a reduction in the windrows that are there following this week's weather. So we continue to monitor that on a weekly basis, and it basically is dependent on the height of the windrows and the width of the sidewalk. So we'll continue to monitor that. The other concern for the something we're also trying to be active on is the opening of the windrows at the intersections. We have temporary winter workers that are on staff during the winter months, and one of their main tasks following a storm is to get those windrows open at the intersection. So we're actively trying to do that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any other comments, questions? There being none, we'll move on to item number 11 on our agenda. We have the minutes of the 26th meeting of Committee of the Whole for December 15th for approval. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of these minutes, the minutes of December 15th, 2014. Moved by Councillor Frank Danch, seconded by Councillor Barbara Butters. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Now we'll go back to the items requiring separate discussion. Number 7. One of the two we dealt with. One anyways. Yeah. Oops. Okay. Item 1. Who spoke on that? Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Planning and Development number 2015-2, subject proposed tree bylaw. Public meeting A, presentation of Planning and Development Report 2015-2 by Sherry Hanson, Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer. B, comments or questions by council. C, oral presentations and or questions by public. D, closing comments and adjourn. That the council approve the proposed tree bylaw as presented.
Sherry Hanson is our Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer. Will give us a report on this. Go ahead, Ms. Hanson. Ms. Hanson.
Thank you. The proposed tree bylaw and report we have here tonight, the reason that we brought this forward, the proposed bylaw is being created to deal with trees on public and private property that may pose a threat to the public's safety. The bylaw will regulate the planting, trimming, and removal of trees if required, and will include procedures, notices, application forms, as well as establishing user fees. The history and background to this is that we have ash trees that are infested with the emerald ash borer. We have ash trees that we have removed, and there's more in need of removal. Some storms have caused damage to some trees, and immediate trimming and removal are required, even if the tree is on private property, as the tree may impact the traveling public. City Council directed city staff to prepare updated tree policies, all in conformity with the 2001 Municipal Act, with provisions for recovery of costs when appropriate. This report will update and will bring us into compliance with that legislation. The proposed bylaw allows the City of Port Colborne to notify property owners that removal of a tree that may pose a danger to the health or safety of any person using the highway, the tree may create a negative impact. Trees that are adjacent and may pose a danger to the health or safety of any person using the highway, the costs for removal shall be borne by the private property owner. The removal of trees that pose an immediate danger to the health and safety of any person using the highway, the cost for removal shall be borne by the municipality. Prevent future trees from being planted on the boulevards, which will reduce the municipality's tree maintenance responsibilities. control the planting of certain species of trees too close to the property line. These trees will no longer impact the heaving of sidewalks or the visibility of the motoring public. Trees that are adjacent and may cause a negative impact on the municipality, and the tree is partially located on city property, the cost shall be equally shared by the property owner and the municipality. This places controls on the removal of adjacent trees via no-charge application and waiving of the municipal consent, thus allowing the municipality to keep track of the removal of trees and any possible infestation. So in summary, there's two processes. There's one of the emergency situation and one of the non-emergency situation. In the emergency situation, we have 3 steps. Step 1, the tree and/or branches are identified that pose an immediate danger to the health and safety of any person using the highway. Step 2, the tree and/or branches are removed and the immediate danger is rectified. Step 3, costs for this immediate removal rest with the municipality. In the non-emergency situation, there's 3 scenarios. Once we identify that there's a tree that may pose a problem, the notice of designation for removal of adjacent tree is given to a property owner. Then the property owner files a notice of objection. Then that appeal is heard by the director and/or council, and then council may affirm, revoke, or vary the notice of designation for removal, or may waive any or all portion of the fee if required, or the fees are paid or collected. In the second scenario, the designation for tree removal for the adjacent tree, the owner files an application for tree removal, the application is approved by the director, the property owner and the agent removes the tree at the owner's expense. And the last scenario, scenario number 3, the designation for removal of the tree is given. No appeal or application to remove is obtained from the owner to the municipality. The municipality then removes the tree, and costs for removal are that of the property owner. The fees are paid and collected.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson. Any questions? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sherry. Sherry, if this bylaw is passed tonight, will that still allow the city to act under the Municipal Act? This is on page 26, I think, of your report, where you list page 26. You list that the city can respond under the following legislation: the Municipal Act, a couple of sections, Building Code Act. Can the city still act that way if we pass this bylaw tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The section 62 and section 62.2 are the acts that I'm actually proposing. 62.1 is when there is may pose a danger, and 62 is the immediate danger. So those pieces of legislation is what we're bringing up to speed and putting into the bylaw.
Thank you very much, but can we use the Building Code Act if this bylaw is passed?
Yes, we can. We can use the Building Code Act when we're dealing with private property and private property trees. So for example, if the tree's in the rear yard and it's a dead, decayed, or damaged or diseased tree, we would go under our property standards bylaw and go through the process accordingly.
Okay, and that, for council's information, that's very important when we're dealing with, say, fire lanes, which we just had an incident where a tree was noticeably dead, leaning that it would have took out the hydro of a neighbor, and also it was right where the other neighbor parked their cars. So, this whole bylaw speaks about problems that would affect the highways and our roads, but the city doesn't have jurisdiction over the fire lanes. So that we can still use property standards and building code is very important for doing those situations where it isn't a roadway necessarily that's affected, but somebody's, life and property, basically. So thanks for that clarification.
Councillor Elliott, and then Councillor Desmarais, and then Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mrs. Hanson. We'll go to the section that I see we'll probably have issues with, process 2, non-emergency situations. That'll probably impact more citizens than anything else. And just clarify for me on a couple of things. Step 3, property owner files notice of objection within 14 days of the date of notice of designation for removal of the adjacent tree. And in the 14 days, if there's no objection, you go to step 6. Owner files application for tree removal. If owner fails to apply for application for tree removal, you go to step 9, which then the municipality removes tree, and cost removal are that of the property owner. What's the time frame for the owner of the property to remove the tree before we go in and do that for them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the timeframes with regards to removal of trees will depend again on weather and situations and scenarios, but any process, we're looking anywhere from 30 to 90 days in that time frame there.
Councillor Demery? Whoops, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to say that it's a fluid date that you're going to set to go to remove the trees, depending on situations. So if it's situational, is there any way we can communicate now, before we pass this, that if the homeowner does not remove the tree, and we're going to go in and take it down, that there's going to be some time frame between them not doing it and us coming in and doing it for them? You've given them 14 days to file an objection, so there's a hard and fast stop date on that. If they don't object, then the owner files application for tree removal. They've done that, but then they don't remove the tree. And there's no stop date on if they don't remove the tree before we go in and do it. So is it something that somebody can say, I was going to get to it and didn't do it, and you come in and took it down before I had a chance to? What's the criteria for the difference in the amount of days that you allow this person as against another person to cut their tree down? Just because I'm thinking if there's going to be issues, this will be the section that you have the issues with, because people will say, I couldn't arrange it in time for me to cut it down, and you come in and did it, and I could have done it cheaper than what you're billing me for. So is there any way that we can firm up dates on how long people have to take the tree down by themselves till we come in and do it for them?
Through Mr. Mayor, one of the discussions we had was regarding this issue with timeframes, but again, I'll give you a scenario. Come to my house and we need to remove my tree, and I don't remove the tree, and it's up to the municipality to remove the tree. We now have to hire the contractor to come in and remove the tree and have our works guy set up to assist the contractor to do that. That all takes time to organize all of that, so we could have a storm in between the time frame in which I said the tree was coming down, and now they're busy dealing with 12 other trees they have to deal with first. So it's very difficult to put a time frame on saying the tree will be removed specifically by 30 days because there are weather conditions that fall into play in that. On the second scenario where you're speaking of with regards to giving the private property the time frame to remove their personal tree, we also have to take in consideration of weather conditions. If there is a huge ice storm, trying to get a contractor in for the property owner to hire a contractor, and all those contractors are busy with municipalities or helping other municipalities because of a storm, we can't have a hard and fast date for that as well. So we've left it kind of working like we do with some of our other bylaws when we give time frames, and we'll work with the individual to reduce that liability and to reduce those situations and circumstances, but we haven't given a hard and fast date.
Thank you. There's so many variables involved that I can see there being, and it's no fault, it's just the way that it is, but there are going to be some issues with people that say that we didn't give them enough time to arrange for the removal of the tree because we haven't given them the deadlines. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't know that it was supposed to be down by such a date. And that's, to me, that's going to be an issue. When you don't tell people that you have 30 days to remove your tree, and we go in and cut it down for them because they didn't remove it. That's the point that I'm trying to drive, is that if they don't remove the tree after they file the application to remove it, how do we go in and say, now we've waited too long for you to do it, now we're the ones that are going to take the tree down for you? That's the issue that I have, is they filed the application for removal, but we haven't said how long we're going to wait for you to do it. There's nothing in here that says that, and that's an issue. If we waited, 3 weeks for somebody and 4 months for somebody else, how do you rationalize that and explain that to the other people? That's the problem that I have, is that there's no way to say, we'll wait for this long for you, but for you, we're going to wait longer. Do you know what I mean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have that in a majority of our bylaws now, but this individual who receives the notice for designation for removal and they apply for a tree removal, they will be given a time frame and will be stated on their application, you have so many days to remove the tree. But again, they have 30 days, and on the 25th day, we have a huge storm. We will work with that individual to give them an extension to hopefully resolve the issue, just like we do in a lot of our other bylaws. You might have a 2 weeks to repair a window, but you get 6 months to, gut the house and do doors and windows and everything. So there's scenarios that you have to take into consideration with the bylaws.
Can we be prudent on pointing out the time frame when somebody comes in to do this, just so that they acknowledge that they're aware that there is a date on it that says you have till, you have 30 days to remove your tree, and somehow get them to acknowledge that date so they're aware of it, so that we don't have anybody coming back and saying, I just didn't know. We've had that before, where people have come to this council and said, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a date. You never told me that. You didn't give me long. If we can set a date and have, the applicant acknowledge that they understand the time parameters involved, it would probably save us a lot of time and effort, and probably a lot of heartache on the residents' side as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can add one more line to the application form here and put the time frame in there, and they're signing that actual application, that they will have notification of that.
You appreciate if you make that change, we'll have to refer it back to come forward at the next council meeting.
It's on the application form.
Okay, that's fine then.
Not the actual bylaw, just the application
Great.
form.
Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to suggest that we get a seconder for this. I don't believe we have one.
Well, we haven't actually put it through yet as to whether we wish to.
Yeah, when I moved it, I just thought someone would second.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Elliott. Any other questions of Mrs. Hanson? Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at the bylaw, and it says places controls on the removal of adjacent trees via no charge application and waiving of the municipal consent, thus allowing, and so on. And then further down in the non-emergency situation, it talks about the owner fails to apply for application somewhere at, there is a place in here, and I can't pinpoint it, where, oh, here it is, or may waive all or a portion of the fees required. If we're telling them it needs to come down, now we're going to charge them for applying to take it down? Is that what you're saying?
No, sir.
Okay, what exactly, that's the way I'm interpreting this, because in one place it says you're not going to charge them, and in another place you're saying that, well, we're going to charge them fees, or we're going to give them back fees. What fees?
Okay.
So that's the only thing I would question. Are you talking about fees for applying, or fees that would apply to taking down of the tree? Which one is it? I'm confused a little bit on that one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the fees that could be waived are the actual fees that you see in Schedule C of the bylaw, which shows the actual fee amounts for removing of the trees. The trimming, removal, stump removal, tree replacement, tree inspections, municipal consent for tree removal is now no charge. The municipal consent is a fee of $168, $174 in order to do work on city property. So we have waived that fee so that you can actually remove the tree, and you're paying for the cost of the tree removal. The fees that council can waive are the actual fees to take down the tree if they so choose when a person appeals the notice of objection for removal of the order of the tree.
Any other questions of Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sherry. Sherry, can I assume that it would be more expensive for a person if they were ordered to take a tree down on their property if the city came in to do it along with the contractor rather than if they just hired a contractor? Are there fees that we would impose along with the price of the contractor? I'm just thinking that it should be known that, I'm just guessing that it's usually more expensive if, you know, we have to have workers involved too. I don't know whether you can answer that question, but I just would assume that it would be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I worked along with the Engineering and Operations Department as well as our insurer and myself to develop this bylaw. And the fees that are proposed in Schedule C are by the hour. So, and again, that incorporates, and these fees were developed and given to me by the Engineering and Operations who deal with this. So if you have a contractor that can come in and remove a tree and he's going to charge you $600 to remove the tree, we're charging $300 an hour, and it may take 3 or 4 hours to remove the tree, remove all the clippings and everything else. So again, it's going to depend on the height of the tree, the size of the tree, if a crane needs to be brought in, if hydro lines are involved. So we can't give you specifics on tree A costs $200, tree B costs $500, because there's different scenarios involved in different situations that will be incorporated into the price.
Fine. Any other questions? Perhaps I could pose one myself, Mrs. Hanson. Is the process any different when the adjoining property to a residential home is the Niagara Conservation Authority?
So the tree is on the residential property or the conservation property?
The tree is on lands either owned or under the jurisdiction of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and the concern is the adjacent residential homeowner.
Is it on environmentally protected land?
Yes, I understand it is.
We would have to review that with the ministry, but the fact that the tree is dead, decayed, damaged, or diseased, I don't think would impact the environmentally protected area, because the tree would have to come down. If it was a healthy tree, that would be a different story. But I would have to review that with the MPCA to ensure that. But I would think if the tree was dead or decayed or damaged or diseased, it would have to come down anyway.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Sir, would you like to come forward?
Yes, I can answer. What constitutes a publicly owned tree and a privately owned tree? In other words, if I have a tree along the sidewalk that seems to be on my side of the sidewalk, that's a problem, or is that my responsibility? Where does the city come in? And in one instance, I called the branch had fallen down, and it was a tree that was between the sidewalk and the street. Now I've got trees that are within my, well, I would consider my property, right along the sidewalk. Is that a tree that I'm responsible for, or is the city responsible for that? I don't know the difference.
Before you answer, could we just have your name and address, sir?
Sure. Greg Swiatek, S-W-I-A-T-E-K. I live at the corner of Park and Catherine Street.
Thank you. Mrs. Hanson, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a section in our engineering department that we go out and we will look for property bars and determine the tree's location. So whether it is located on private property or on city property, and if it is bordering that, the percentage of the tree is, say, 20% on private property and 80% on city property. We will find that out before we move forward.
Secondly, am I allowed to, the tree is my responsibility, I'm allowed to take it down myself?
Go ahead.
If I take out a chainsaw, simply a tree, I pick up a chainsaw and we go at it. I mean, that's the cheapest way to do it, but it's probably the most dangerous as well.
Go ahead, Ms. Hanson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you have a tree which is 100% on private property, you may remove your private property tree. You cannot remove a tree that is on city property or trim a tree on city property without the permission of the city.
So, coming from Toronto the last few years, you cannot take a tree down on your own property regardless of if it's entirely on your property or not. Because, you know, somebody out there with a chainsaw, I can go up in the backyard, and I have some dead ash trees, and you take them down and knock down his neighbor's fence and knock the tree down on his roof, and, you know, that's my call. If I'm allowed to do that, then there may be some unforeseen repercussions when somebody who doesn't know what they're doing starts taking down a tree, even though it's on his property. But that is a separate issue. I'll let you handle that.
Do you have a comment, Mrs. Hanson? No. Any other members of the public who have any input on this issue? Thank you for your comment, sir. Okay, council, you have a recommendation before you to approve the proposed tree bylaw as presented. May I have a mover and a seconder to propose? May we have that? Okay. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Okay. Item 2. Who made that request? Barb Butters, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 2 is Department of Planning and Development Report Number 2015-1, subject recommendation report amendment to Development Charge Bylaw 6131/97/14, 2-year waiving of charges for commercial, institutional, and industrial uses. The recommendation is, number 1, that council hereby determines that no further public meeting is required under Section 12(3) of the Development Charges Act prior to adoption of the attached bylaw. 2, that the amendment to the Development Charges Bylaw attached as Appendix C, waiving development charges for all institutional, commercial, and industrial development for 2 years, backdated to September 9th, 2014, is hereby approved. And 3, that directed to prepare the notice of passing of as per the Development Charges Act.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Frank Datch. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason that I lifted this is that when we got this report back in, I think it was November, there was a council direction to grandfather in a commercial development that is occurring on the corner of Steele and College Street West, and it was inadvertently not put in here. So with the good advice of Mr. Aquilina, I would like to refer this back to staff for them to bring it back with the inclusion of that information as per council direction from that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we can do that. Is there a seconder supporting that? Or do the matters deferred back? Okay, next item, number 4. I think that was, now we have to vote on referring it back. All those in favor? All those against? Matters carried. Item number 4, Barbara Butters, I think that was yours as well. Was it yours, Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. Department of Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division, report number 2015-8, subject 2015 Engineering and Operations Division rates and fees. Whereas the Council of the City of Port Colborne has the authority to impose fees with respect to certain engineering and operations services, it is recommended that Schedule A, a schedule for the rates and fees for engineering and operations services, be enacted by bylaw for the period from January 1st, 2015 to December 31st, 2015.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Bodner? All those in favor? Well, discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the reason I pulled it is because of an issue that we had earlier. Councillor Danch brought up about the rate that somebody had to pay for water issue. It was a $400 and change bill. And in the schedule of rates, page 67, number 2, water turn off or turn on, regular hours is $56, $57 proposed for 15. The after hours rate is $400, 407 proposed for 15. If I'm not mistaken, that was the one that Councillor Danch had brought forward before, which seems to be, I'm all for cost recovery, but it almost seems to be a penal cost to somebody that has to call out us after hours, especially on weekends. It's almost like it's a, unfortunately your water leak started on the weekend and there's nothing you can do about it, so for us to come out, it costs you $400. But should it have occurred from Monday to Friday between the hours of 8 and 5, we'd gladly come and turn it off for $56. Which to me, the discrepancy from $56 to $400 just doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand we've got to cover the cost of having the guy in the truck, and I understand that we're mandated to pay X number of dollars for X number of hours worked. But the resident that Councillor Danch brought forward, or the issue that he brought forward, said we were there for 10 or 15 minutes and the guy got the bill for $400. And I understand that there's a minimum cost to run the truck and the employee out to do it. But somehow we have to take a look at what we're charging our residents. I mean, just because the water leak happened at the wrong time through no fault of your own, you got to pay 8 times the amount that somebody that it happens Monday to Friday 8 to 5, which I can't agree with. And I know that it's probably in the collective agreement we negotiate what we're paying our guys after hours, and I'm fully aware of contractual obligations that way. But I still don't see why our residents should have to pay that amount of money. And I have an issue with that. We couldn't deal with it. And Councillor Danch brought it forward earlier, and it's proposed in here, and if we're going to have any chance to have a crack at it, now would be the opportunity. I'm going to ask Mr. Hanson if he's got any ways that we can reduce the charge. I'm not talking about waiving it, but just because of a timing of bad luck, poor luck, for some of our people to have them pay 8 times the amount that a lucky person has doesn't seem fair. And I don't know if we can do that here. I think we're kind of locked in contractually on what we have to pay to recoup. But I'd like to just state wholeheartedly that I'm totally against that charge, and somehow we've got to fix it going forward. And I'm not sure exactly how we can, but I'd appreciate any comments that you might have with that.
Mr. Hanson?
To you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Elliott, fair comment. Just the scenario would be if the water technician is out on the job on a Monday, he's out in the truck, he's doing some work, he goes out for 10 minutes, does the water turn off, does the water turn on, that reflects $57 of his time. If he's called out on a Sunday, and unfortunately the gentleman that had the problem late last year, it was on a Sunday, It's a 4-hour call out. It's double time. And the rates are charged accordingly. When we updated these quite a number of years ago, probably goes back 10 years or more, what council directed at the time was to ensure that all of these rates where we have to charge them back to the homeowners reflect what the actual costs are. Some of the rates were $50, $100, and didn't reflect what the actual costs were. So these were redone a number of years ago, and as you see tonight, there's a construction cost index that's applied to the rates each year to these rates, so it's in the range of $407 for that particular service now. The only thing I could do is, I don't have an actual breakdown on what that is. We could take the current 2015 rates coming up, work that out on a 4-hour basis. If it was a Sunday, we have to kind of average it out. It wouldn't be double time on a Saturday, or just after hours it would be only time and a half. So we kind of average this out through any scenarios. So a Sunday night type scenario would be the most expensive one. So we've created that flat rate. I think the alternative to that would be an actual cost or an actual billing. That's difficult. We'd have to work out an actual invoice for each case, each scenario, for each homeowner, and that's not an effective way for the time. It's better off, we're better off to try to work out what an average cost might be. So on that basis, the only thing we could do would be to defer this and go back and revisit all these rates. I don't know what else to suggest other than what's here.
Yeah, no, I don't want to defer it. I mean, I'm just thinking on a go-forward basis, how do we control the costs that we're passing on to the residents? That's the biggest issue, right? We're trying to manage our people so that we can in turn pass on savings to the residents. This is one thing. I mean, if you look down at the rate below at sewer rotting, I mean, it's $132 on regular hours, $700 after hours. I guess without getting into legals and contracts and everything like that, we operate on a cost recovery basis. That's the way we should. But some of these costs, I mean, I'd hate to have that. I'd hate to have somebody come out after hours and get a bill, for $800 for doing the sewer rotting, or, turn my water on, turn my water off for $400. I think those are things we have to look at going forward. And through budgeting and through, I hate to dance around it, but through contract negotiation and stuff like that, we got to try to save our people, our residents, as much money as possible. And I guess that's one thing that bothers me. We heard it from the gentleman that Councillor Danch brought forward, and just looking at the rates, the after-hours stuff, how incrementally more it gets on the after-hours side. And I think it's something that maybe we should take a look at through budgeting or conversations that we have going forward.
Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson. Mr. Hanson, is a plumber allowed, or would a plumber take a call? Does he have the tools to turn off the water?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, a plumber can't touch the actual shutoff at the property line, which is the property and a part of the water distribution system that we operate. The specific case that happened last year was very unfortunate because the break occurred right at the internal shutoff to the house. If it had occurred just past the shutoff, the homeowner, of course, could have just shut his own water off internally. There would have been no issue. There wouldn't have been a flood. It broke at the shutoff, which required the water service to be turned off out at the property line by our technician. So I think, I know the $400, and just doing some simple math on it, $400 sounds like a lot, but if someone's making $28 to $30 an hour plus overhead for a 4-hour call out, that's $200, and it's double time, it's $400. And that doesn't even include the price of the truck. So the numbers are there. In the case of the sewer rotting that's on the list just below that, that's a 2-man crew, and there's a specialized wastewater truck and the rotting equipment that's required for that as well. So all those costs for the overheads and the call-outs are built in, and the double crew in the case of sewer rotting, where you see a $700 charge, is reflective of what that crew costs.
Any other comments? Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have like, through you to Mr. Hanson, do you have like the stats on, say, how many times this would actually happen on the worst day to have a problem, like throughout the, say, for 2014? Do you have kind of those stats? And then you could maybe compare, it happened 3 times on the worst day that cost so much money or whatever. And then is there another way to kind of spread those costs out in another way, or is there even a way for the person who does get the bill to pay it off over 3 or 4 months? Because you hit somebody with whether it's a $700 bill or a $400 bill, yeah, that could really put a crinkle in your day. So I'm just wondering both ways of it, whether that person, if they did get that bill, can they pay it off over, say, an extended period of time without being punished more, or if it could be absorbed in some other place, if it's a not very common occurrence.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly work with, and the treasurer can attest to the fact that we will work with any homeowner to make a friendly payment plan for anybody that is in need of that. Council again directed previously that the cost of this is directed to the sort of a user pay, that the person incurring the cost will then pay that cost. Certainly there's ways you could spread costs against the water system itself, but that's not a true user pay in the sense that they were the ones that incurred the cost on a Sunday night, and the rest of the ratepayers aren't, or the water users aren't really responsible for that. Again, it's just council's directions on how you want to see the rates set. So we think the user pay, where the actual costs are very close to the actual cost, are actually assessed against the person using it. So it's probably the fairest way.
Any further questions or comments? Then I call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. I believe item number 10 was next. 7? Yvonne Doucette, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Correspondence received from Kevin Wedling, 218 Elizabeth Street, water bill issues, reimbursement of water bill. That the request of reimbursement, excuse me a second here, I've got things crisscrossing over. There we go. That the request for reimbursement of the city portion of the water bill be received and that no further action be taken. That the request regarding the city's water billing practice be referred to the Director of Engineering and Operations for a review. That the matter of poor customer service be referred to the Chief Administrative Officer, and that Kevin Wedling be so advised.
Is there a seconder for that? Alderman Desmarais, Councillor Desmarais. Any comments or questions?
Yep. Mr. Wedling and I have had discussions over starting in June about this issue. He has no problems with 2 and 3. Number 4, good, you let him know. Number 1, he went from $300 to $900 in one bill, and that also compounded itself again. And he's just wondering if there's a way that he can recover some of this money. I have some concerns about that, but I told him I would bring it to you, and I told him that we should as a council discuss it, because we at council are the only ones that can make that decision. Staff does not have the ability to do that, and he was told that, and he requested that I bring it to you. He knows he's got to pay water. He has no problems with that. And one of my concerns is if it went down your sewer, how do we not charge it? But at the same time, we had a situation similar to this, and we sort of set precedent about 8 to 10 months ago, when there was a situation where someone had water running for 8 months, and that person, the house was empty, and we turned around and we reversed some of the charges, not all of it, but we reversed some charges because it created such a problem. I'm wondering if we can't do the same thing with this. but I'm leaving it to the council to discuss and see if there is any way. The other option is to also have Mr. Sinez enter into the discussion, because I'm sure he's very much aware of the last situation I was talking about, and maybe see if we can't apply the same reasoning we did with them to this, and then he can recover some of it.
Mr. Sinez, do you have any comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have done in the past, and it depends on the circumstances. For example, if they have a water burst in their house and they would have to pay for the water, and but if we know that it didn't go down the sewer type of thing, then we wouldn't charge them the sewer cost because there was no cost to us in the sewer, but he'd have to pay the full water cost. That type of situation, would occur. The one thing I would say, we do have to caution, because once you do it for one, we do it for all. We also have, and I mentioned this to Councillor Doucette before too, is that we also have to pay the region for both the regional water, because they supply the water to the city and to the homeowner, and along with the sewer charges. So there is a cost, a direct cost to the region that we have to pay no matter what. So there's a portion of that we would have to make sure that we recoup that cost. The only other solution that we've had in the past is, there is the city's charge, as to whether or not council wants to look at the city's charge for the above average of the homeowner's normal water usage. That's an alternative that has happened in the past. We had a couple circumstances. So there are some little solutions if council decides that they would like to look at that, but I think we still have to look at recouping our direct costs, and we have to watch in how we set precedent.
Any further comments or questions? Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr.
Bonder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of points on this. One, definitely, I would think that our practice of billing every 3 months has sort of gotten in the way here. This is a situation where a very high bill should maybe in the future trip some sort of investigation, where a bill higher than what would have been expected should maybe trip a monthly reading. So then you can track the next month it's still high. There's really a problem going on here. But what happens here is the gentleman gets a very high 3-month bill, realizes there may be a problem, starts questioning it. The next bill comes in 3 months later, and it's almost double the first bill, and then a third bill after that. This is crazy. I mean, to me, this is just wrong. If we get something that says there's a problem, it should automatically revert to a monthly reading. And I know that causes a little bit of a problem for us anyway, because we're not set up to do monthly readings, but maybe we need to start doing that, just so that we can avoid situations like this in the future. No more reason than that. But as far as reimbursing Mr. Wendling or reducing his cost, I would think that it would be a good idea to reduce some of the cost, without a doubt. I mean, no matter what, it still comes down to he had faulty equipment, but I think our practice of 3-month billing gets in the way here. So I would be agreeable to reduce some cost.
Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson, I guess. I don't see anywhere in here where any of this was caused by city equipment or it was a city problem. It was solely a homeowner problem. I'd just like that confirmed again if you could.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bodner. The house itself, it was a new house, and what was discovered was there was 3 toilets in the house that were leaking, slowly leaking. We worked, staff went in and worked with the homeowner as best we could to try to determine where the leakage, because it was acknowledged that the readings were quite high. We went in and spent quite a number of hours working with the homeowner, and he was very appreciative of that, doing some dye testing and actually determining where the leaks were. So it was solely with the homeowner and the defective plumbing in there that caused the initial flows went through in the high readings. I might say, and I know part of the recommendation and the comments made from the homeowner that we should be doing a monthly billing. I can tell council that's not possible at the present time. We have 6,600 meters in the city. These are read, generally, the majority of them are read manually. And the only way this can be done at the present time is to manually read them every 3 months and do a billing process based on that. That's what our costs are based on. As we transfer to RF meters, radio frequency meters, we would be able to, once these meters are converted, and other municipalities have done a wholesale conversion of their system, once this is done, we can read the meters on any basis that we want, weekly, monthly, bi-monthly. So that will be available in the future, but it's not going to be available at the present time. The only other cost, and Mr. Sness probably wants to speak to this, is the billing system itself. Even if he has the readings, there would be additional cost to do monthly readings to the billing system. And perhaps I'll let Mr. Sness speak to that aspect of it.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, just before Mr. Sness speaks to that, so the city has invested some money into this by having our people go out there, you know, help the homeowner and do it. I don't know, I have a problem reimbursing anything on this. It wasn't, the billing system works for 99.9% of the people in the city. If a problem like this comes up, yeah, it could be problematic, but we've heard that it really isn't possible right now to do that. Certainly we could look at it when the new meters come on board, but you know, I haven't heard anything here tonight that would make me want to, you know, reverse any of this and actually then have the neighbor pay for the water that was his problem that went out. You know, somebody pays for it. There's no other way to do it. So anyways, I wouldn't be voting to give anything back on this one.
Mr. Sinez, your comment.
Based on that, just a few comments. Most of the times that we do have unusual readings and higher readings is due to leaky toilets. And that's majority of them. And we do have, and I know that staff do provide them, and you know, the dye kits and so on to check those out if they see that, you know, they're either hearing it or they see that they're using water. When we do water billings, our staff do look at, like they do look for high usages. In this case, the first bill was about $100 more, which isn't unusual. So it really didn't trigger anything. The second one did trigger something, and our staff did call. And so we do call when we find that, hey, there is a large, because we don't want to send out a large bill and then we get the phone call anyway. So they do make those phone calls periodically to ones that we can. There's you know, 2,000 accounts in a billing, so that we're looking at. So there is a reporting that we can try to track some of these larger ones. So we do try to make those phone calls, but unfortunately it is sort of after the fact too. But again, it's you know, to go to as Mr. Hanson mentioned, to go to a monthly billing system, there are obviously different more costs involved in order to do that. There's more more bills that have to go out. There's the postage. There's the time of reading on a monthly basis. As right now, as Mr. Hanson mentioned, a manual read. The billing cycles, we have 3 billing cycles, and when you go through one billing cycle and they've went out and read them, we then start into the next one, and so it is a constant billing until you get into the radio frequency ones, which I know that our staff are looking at that. And we have changed out a number of them because we started in the budget last year of starting to replace them, and we're putting, I think we put $40,000 in the budget last year to start replacing them to start to get to there. So those are some of the things that we are trying to do, and like I said, most of the time it is leaky toilets, and we have a lot of them, and a lot of people have leaky toilets and high water usage, and not all of them come to council and we work with them to try to work out payment arrangements and so on, so that, you know, they can pay it over a period of time if it is a high bill, so that they're not having to dish out, you know, a lot of money all at once. So we try to work with them that way.
Good enough.
Councillor Bodnar, or Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these, so the meter that the guy has now, he can't not go and look at that meter, like, there's not like numbers across it that change as the water's used, is that correct?
Mr. Hanson?
Here, Mr. Mayor. Certainly the homeowner can monitor their meter at any time. There's a red dial on it. If you look at the small red dial at the top of the meter, if it's moving at all, that means there's water through it. All you have to do is shut off all your fixtures, go down and look at your meter, and if the dial's moving, there's a leak.
Oh, okay, so the...
And he could monitor if
Okay,
it's
so the
safe.
customer actually could see on his meter...
Absolutely.
Something should make him think, oh, something's wrong here.
And they can check the totals on a daily basis to see.
Okay.
You can pretty well tell what your daily consumptions
Yeah.
can be, depending on the number of people in the house.
Okay.
So that can be monitored on a daily
Okay,
basis as well.
and new meters will have the same feature where a customer could be able to look at that window and say, oh, I think I have a problem here because the thing's spinning around, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, that's my only question.
Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson. I was told that little feature of that little red dial that turns is gone on the new meters. And this is a brand new house, it would be a new meter. So I was told he couldn't do that. Now you're telling me he can?
Here, Mr. Mayor, all the old original meters that we installed had the red dial.
Yeah,
on them.
yeah.
Now, I know when this particular homeowner was having problems, we actually went in and changed the meter out to try to ensure. I believe the meter was changed out.
Okay.
So I don't know what type of meter. I could look into that tomorrow that he has. He may even have an RF meter now that could be monitored. So could certainly take a look at that as an option.
Okay, good. Thank you. The other thing I can add to that is, by the way, I mean, if you look at his letter, he talks about the 5 C's of service and everything else. But I will tell you that he was very complimentary on the people that showed up at his house and worked very, very hard with him to try to figure out exactly where these leaks were, because they were hard to find, but they were there, okay? All he had was compliments for those people. He said the people down on the bottom, the people that are out with the public, he has nothing but compliments for them. So that, I think that's very important as well, to recognize that he threw compliments out constantly about them. He feels that they are the ones that are really, really helping Port Colborne out. And you know, your direct contact are the people that are important, and he's indicated that they were there. They were there for him. So.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. Mr. Sinise?
Just a further comment that to one of the questions of Councillor Desmarais. The other fact of when we do look at billings, and if you see a high billing, especially when you're getting into the spring and summer months, we find that consumption does go up because they're filling their pools, or watering their lawns, or putting in new grass, and so on. And I believe there was a new sod put in at this property in June. So again, those types of things, like, you know, and sometimes if we call them, they're saying to us, well, what do you mean? You know, why are you checking up on us, type of thing, right? So, you know, so there are other things that happen in the springtime and all that, that sometimes if it's not, you know, if it's a $3,000 or $4,000 bill, when there's bills normally a couple $100, that is a little bit high. But when you're looking a few, you know, $400, $500, that could be normal for some people, filling up, you know, water, if they were an automatic sprinkler system that goes on every day type of thing. So there's a lot of different circumstances out there that we sort of have to look at.
Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would not be in favor of reducing that bill for all the reasons stated, but I would hope that if he needs time to pay it, that we would certainly work with him in that regard. And then whatever when Mr. Hanson said he would check and see what kind of meter it was, whether a customer could actually see for themselves that, you know, too much water was being used, that we should be making sure that we have like really customer-friendly type meters, that whatever we replace to go to, that a person who owns that home can do that.
Thank you. Do we have the motion? Call up for the question. All those in favor? Hands up. All
Just the
all those
question.
in favor?
Just
The original motion. Those opposed? One. Motion carried. Item number 10. Now, this is a motion to, when we did the assignment of the appointments to various committees, we missed one dealing with our Port Colborne Energy Inc., and we needed another member of council to sit on the board of the company.
It's got to be Ron or B, right?
Yeah. Do I have a motion? Alderman Butters?
I'll move that we put Ron on there, Ron Bodner on there.
I'll second that.
Seconder?
Yeah.
We have the question. Any comments? There be none. Call for the question. All those in favor?
You're on. You're done.
Yes. Opposed, if any? Are there any notices of motion, councillors?
Not this week, anyway.
There being none, may I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting?
Certainly.
Moved by Barbara Butters, councillor, seconded by Madame Desmarais. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Now, are we ready to move into the full council meeting? Call this regular council meeting to order. Deputy Clerk Sinez, are there any addendum items?
Mr. Mayor, there are no addendum items this evening.
We will now proceed to the confirmation of the agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder for approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Doucette. All those in favor? Any? Motion carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? There being none, we have before you 6 sets of minutes for approval, and I'll recount them. There are the minutes of the 35th meeting special of council of November 28, 2014, the inaugural meeting of council on December 1st, 2014, the 36th meeting special of council on December 8th, 2014, the excuse me, 37th meeting special of council of December 10th, 2014, the 8th meeting special of council of December 15th, 2014, and finally the 39th meeting regular of council of December 15th, 2014. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of this block minutes? Moved by Councillor I'll take Councillor Frank Danch. Seconder?
Come on, guys, something later on.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can over here. Come on.
Councillor David Elliott. Are there any questions or comments? No questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Items requiring separate discussion. I believe the amount or the numbers are the same. No further items. Can I have a motion to approve the items? It's moved by Alderman Bodner, seconded by Councillor Doucette. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We have one proclamation arising from the presentation of Mr. White of Crime Stoppers of Niagara earlier this evening, which I will now read. Whereas Crime Stoppers of Niagara, a citizen volunteer-managed charity since 1985, has for 30 years served the region of Niagara and the citizens of Port Colborne with their volunteer efforts, solely for the purpose of sustaining and raising the quality of life in Niagara, with its continued efforts for a safer Niagara community. And whereas we thank the Board of Directors of Crime Stoppers of Niagara, past, present, and future, for their dedication, now therefore I, Mayor John Maloney, proclaim January 25th to the 31st, 2015 as Crime Stoppers of Niagara Week in the city of Port Colborne. May I have a mover and a seconder for this proclamation? Moved by Councillor Butters, seconded by Councillor Danch. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. We also have the minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of November 4th, 2014 for approval. Can I have a motion to approve these minutes? Moved by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. Are there any notices of motion, councillors? Deputy Clerk Sinez, are there any bylaws for approval this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We do have one bylaw that will be removed from the agenda, which was the bylaw to impose the development charges for the City of Port Colborne, as that was referred back to staff, so that'll come back at the next meeting. So I will change the order of the numbers, and I'll read those off to be read first, second, and third time, which is bylaw number 61750115, being a bylaw to authorize and regulate the planting, care, maintenance, and removal of trees on or affecting property of the City of Port Colborne. Bylaw 61760215, which would be being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 89-2000, being a bylaw regulating traffic and parking on city roads, Catherine Street. Bylaw number 61770315, being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for engineering and operation services for 2015. And those are the the bylaws to be read three times, Your Worship.
May I have a mover and a seconder approve these bylaws? Moved by Councillor Doucette, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Deputy Clerk Sinez, could we have the confirmatory bylaw?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a confirmatory bylaw to be read three times and passed by council. Bylaw number 61780415, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its special and regular meetings of January 12th, 2015.
May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Moved by Councillor Danch, seconded by Councillor Bodner. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Just before we adjourn, I just want to remind Council that our next regularly scheduled Committee of the Whole and Council meetings are on Monday, January 26th, 2015, and Monday, February 9th, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. Our first special meeting of Council to consider the budget will be on Tuesday, January 20th at 5:30 p.m. We will also be holding a special meeting of Council for Strategic Planning on Saturday, January 24th at 9 a.m. here in the Council chambers. These are public meetings and anyone may attend. May I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting? Councillor Dan. Seconded by Councillor Desmarais. All those in favor? Motion carried. No, against. Nobody against. Motion carried. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.